Throughout my life, I have always tried to adhere to one simple but important rule: to keep my word. No matter how hard or unpleasant my promises may have been, I considered it my duty to keep them. This character trait, instilled in me by my parents from childhood, became an integral part of my personality. I believe that honesty and reliability are the qualities that define a person, and I strive to be exactly like that. My name is Alexei, and I am 27 years old. I am a young specialist in the field of information technologies. I work as a programmer in a large company. My career is going very well. I earn enough to not only provide for myself, but also allow some excesses. My colleagues respect me for my professionalism and responsible approach to work, and my bosses appreciate me for my ability to solve complex problems in the shortest possible time. Despite the fact that work occupied most of my time, I always dreamed of having a family. I wanted to find a man with whom I could share not only everyday life, but also dreams, aspirations, joys, and sorrows. And so, a few months ago, fate gave me an amazing gift. I met Nastia. It happened at a corporate party of our company. Nastia worked in the marketing department, and we had never crossed paths before. But that evening something clicked, and we couldn't take our eyes off each other. We talked for hours, forgetting about everything in the world. I was amazed at her intelligence, her sense of humor, and the ease with which she understood my technical jokes. After that meeting, we started dating. Every day spent with Nastia convinced me that she was the person I had been looking for all my life. We shared common interests. We had similar views on life and the future. Even our flaws seemed to complement each other perfectly. After 3 months of our relationship, we decided to move in together. It was a serious step, but we both felt that we were ready for it. Living together opened up new facets of our relationship. We learned to find compromises, respect each other's personal space, and support each other in difficult moments. Every evening, coming home from work and seeing Nastia smile, I realized that I had made the right choice. Time passed, and the thought of making our relationship more serious occupied my thoughts more and more often. One evening, when we were sitting on the balcony of our apartment, enjoying the warm summer sunset, Nastia gently laid her head on my shoulder and quietly, with a smile, said, "You know, I am so happy with you. I feel like we are made for each other." At that moment, something inside me clicked and I realized this was a sign and I couldn't delay any longer. I was determined that it was time to act and propose to her. The following weeks turned into carefully planned preparations. I wanted this moment to be remembered not only as a romantic gesture, but as one of the most magical memories for both of us. I enlisted the help of my friends Anton and Sergey, with whom we not only worked together but had been friends for a long time. They were the people I could turn to in any difficult situation, and I knew I could rely on them. The guys and I thought about various options for a long time. Anton, as a man with a sense of style, suggested organizing a dinner on the roof of one of the city's skyscrapers, so that I could propose under the sound of live music and with a view of the city's night lights. Sergey, more adventurous and fond of extreme sports, suggested the idea of a parachute jump, where in flight you could open a banner with the inscription, "Will you marry me?" But none of these options suited me. I realized that Nastia is a person who appreciates sincerity, simplicity, and naturalness. So I chose a place that was symbolic for both of us, a cozy park near our home. We often walked there in the evenings, discussed the future, and just enjoyed the silence and beauty of nature. In this park, there was an old gazebo, drowning in greenery and flowers, which always stood as if out of time, hidden from the bustle of the city. It seemed to me the perfect place for such an important moment. I asked my friends to help with the preparations. Anton took upon himself the decoration of the gazebo. Candles, soft light of lanterns, and flower arrangements that created an atmosphere of romance and coziness. Sergey, despite his tendency to extreme, organized a small string orchestra, which was to play our favorite melody with Nastia at the most important moment. Every element was thought out to the smallest detail, and I hoped that everything would go perfectly. Next day had arrived, and I was more nervous than I had ever been in my life. My mind was spinning. What if something went wrong? What if she suspected I was getting ready to propose to her? I went to work in the morning, as I always did, trying to look calm and not give away my excitement. I was going to have to spend the day knowing that in the evening I was going to change my life forever. Nastia was at work, too, and we had agreed to meet in the park after hours, as we often did, ostensibly just for an evening stroll. But this evening promised to be special. When I arrived at the park, everything was ready. My friends had not let me down. The gazebo was literally glowing in the lights of hundreds of candles, creating a soft, romantic light. The air was scented with fresh roses that adorned the entire interior of the gazebo. Musicians stood nearby, ready at any moment to start playing our favorite melody with Nastia, which was to be the background for the most important question in my life. Anton and Sergey, my faithful friends, hid nearby to capture the event on camera. I wanted this moment to stay with us forever, captured in every detail. When I met Nastia at the entrance to the park, my heart beat even faster. She was adorable in her light summer dress that fluttered in the breeze. We strolled leisurely through the familiar alleys, talking about our day. I tried to keep the appearance of an ordinary evening stroll, but inside me everything was literally boiling with anticipation. When we came to the gazebo, Nastia froze, surprised by what she saw. Her eyes opened with surprise when she noticed the candles and heard the first gentle chords of our song. At that moment I felt that everything was going exactly as I had planned. I gently took her hand and led her to the gazebo where the flickering candles and rose petals created an almost fairy tale atmosphere. I knew this was the perfect moment. Standing in front of her, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. My heart was pounding so loudly that I thought even the musicians could hear it. I looked at Nastia and, getting down on one knee, pulled a small velvet box out of my pocket. It seemed as if the whole world had stopped waiting. Nastia, I began, feeling my voice shake. I know I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want you to be a part of all my plans, all my victories, and all our future joys. You make me happy, Nastia, and I love you with all my heart. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Nastia, will you marry me? I opened the box, and inside it glistened a ring with a small but exquisite diamond, which at that moment seemed to me a symbol of our common future. Simple but infinitely precious. My hands trembled slightly, but I watched Nastia's reaction with bated breath. She looked at me without taking her eyes off me, and in her gaze I saw an ocean of emotion. Her eyes glistened with tears, and I felt the tension in my chest rise. Time seemed to slow down, and every moment seemed like an eternity. I stood on my knee, still holding the ring, until Nastia finally whispered, barely restraining her emotions. Yes, yes, of course, yes. Her voice was filled with joy, and it seemed that at that moment the whole world shone for the two of us. I got to my feet and gently slipped the ring onto her finger. We hugged, and I felt her tears of happiness roll down my shoulder. In that moment, I realized that all my excitement, all my preparations had been worth it. We stood in each other's arms as the musicians began playing our tune, creating a magical backdrop for the beginning of our new phase of life. That evening was the beginning of a new phase in our lives. The next day, we began our wedding preparations. I fully immersed myself in this process, trying to take into account all the wishes of Nastia and make our holiday unforgettable. My friends, Anton and Sergey, volunteered to help with the organization, and I was eternally grateful to them. We made a list of guests, chose the venue for the ceremony and banquet, and began to choose wedding dresses. Every day brought new worries and decisions, but Nastia and I coped with everything, supporting each other and not forgetting about the main thing, our love. It seemed that life could not be better. I had a favorite job, a beautiful fiancé, and loyal friends. I was sure that only happiness was ahead of us. But fate was preparing for me a test that would test not only my relationship with Nastia, but also my loyalty to my own principles. The last days before the wedding were approaching. Nastia and I were finalizing the final preparations, trying to take into account every little detail to make our special day perfect. The excitement was growing every day, but along with it grew the anticipation of the moment when we would finally become husband and wife. One evening as Nastia and I were discussing the details of our wedding, she suddenly suggested an idea that stumped me a bit. We were sitting on the couch, surrounded by stacks of photo catalogs, notebook tags, and invitations, when she suddenly said, "You know, honey, I just had a thought. How would you feel about having a closed-eye ceremony? It's very popular right now. I've read about it on the internet. It seems to make the moment even more emotional because you're relying only on your feelings. We will stand in front of each other, not seeing but feeling each other's presence. Can you imagine how special that will be?" I froze for a moment, digesting her words. The idea seemed unusual, even a little strange, but at the same time there was something appealing about it, something deeply romantic. I imagined us standing in front of our loved ones, saying our vows to each other, not seeing each other, but feeling every word, every touch. It would be a true immersion into our feelings, without the distractions of the outside world, a pure, intimate experience. I looked at Nastia, who was eagerly awaiting my response. There was a glow of anticipation in her eyes for something magical. "You know," I answered after a short pause, There is something special about it. Holding hands in complete darkness, we will be able to focus on each other, on our emotions. It will be something unique. I agree, let's try it. Nastia literally glowed with happiness. She hugged me and exclaimed joyfully, I'm so glad that you supported this idea. I'm sure it will make our ceremony unforgettable. It will be our moment, our special day. After that conversation, time seemed to speed up. The next few days flew by like a blink of an eye. We were running errands, coordinating the last details with the organizers, checking every element to make sure everything went perfectly. We held the final fitting of suits and dresses, approved the menu for the banquet, discussed the decor several times. Guests started to arrive from other cities, and every day the tension was growing. And then came the long-awaited day. I woke up early in the morning with an inexpressible feeling, a feeling that today something incredibly important would happen, that this day would change everything. My friends, Anton and Sergey, came to my place in the morning to help me with the last preparations. They were there for me from the beginning, helping me with my costume choices, supporting me in all my decisions. They seemed a little tense that day, but I put it down to the natural excitement before an important event. We had a cup of coffee, joked around trying to lighten the atmosphere, and I felt their support with all my heart. We made all the final preparations together, and by the time I was completely ready. Well, my friend, are you ready to become a married man? Anton asked, clapping me on the shoulder. More than ready, I answered with a smile. Honestly, I've been waiting for this moment all my life. Sergey looked at Anton strangely, but he didn't say anything. I didn't pay attention to it again, completely immersed in my thoughts and feelings. We arrived at the ceremony site in advance. Everything looked perfect, a beautifully decorated hall, flowers, musicians ready to start playing at any moment. The guests were slowly gathering, taking their seats. I stood at the altar, nervously adjusting my bow tie and waiting for Nastia to appear. Finally, the wedding coordinator came up to me and told me it was time to start the ceremony. Remember, you will have your eyes closed, he reminded me. We'll walk you down the aisle and help you get in the right place. I nodded, feeling my heart start to beat faster. I was blindfolded with a tight bandage, and I found myself in total darkness. Someone took me gently under the arm and led me forward. I could hear the whispers of the guests, the sounds of instruments being tuned, but it all seemed so distant and unreal. I was put in my seat, and I heard someone stand up next to me. A warm hand touched mine, and I immediately realized it was Nastia. I squeezed her fingers, feeling a wave of love and tenderness come over me. The ceremony began. We listened to the priest's words, said our vows, exchanged rings, all in complete darkness, relying only on our feelings and emotions. It was an incredible experience. I felt completely immersed in the moment, focused only on Nastia and our promises to each other. You may now kiss the bride, I heard the priest's voice. I reached forward, finding Nastia's lips. This kiss was indeed special, the most tender, the most sincere, the most magical of my entire life. I felt my whole being fill with love and happiness. At that moment, I felt someone put a piece of paper in my hand. You may remove the bandages, the coordinator said. I slowly untied the blindfold, blinking against the bright light. My heart was filled with emotion. I couldn't wait to see my now wife's face. But what I saw when my eyes adjusted to the light shocked me. It wasn't my Nastia standing in front of me, but her friend, also Nastia, but completely different. She was noticeably fuller than the Nastia I had been seeing all this time. She had different facial features, different eye color. I froze in place, unable to believe what was happening. This new Nastia looked at me with love and hope, but I saw fear and uncertainty in her eyes. The guests in the room fell silent, clearly sensing that something was going wrong. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. Suddenly I remembered the note that had been placed in my hand. With trembling fingers, I unfolded the sheet and began to read. Dear Sasha, I should have confessed to you earlier, but our whole relationship was just for this moment. I never had real feelings for you. Unlike Nastia, you'll be truly happy with her. Forgive me, and please give true love a chance. Your ex Nastia. I reread the note several times, not believing my eyes. Then I looked around at the guests, looking for support from my friends. But neither Anton, nor Sergey, nor any of my other close friends were in the audience. They knew about this plan and didn't say a word to me. At that moment, I felt a wave of anger and resentment rising inside me. I wanted to scream, to make a scandal, to expose this cruel deception in front of all the guests. But then I remembered my principles, how all my life I had tried to keep my word, no matter how difficult it was. I made a promise to love Nastia until the day I died. even if it was not the Nastia I knew, but I was used to keeping my promises. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down and collect my thoughts. "It's okay," I said, trying to make my voice sound confident. I took this new Nastia's hand and turned to my guests with a strained smile. "Thank you all for sharing this special day with us." The guests seemed to relax a little, though you could still feel the tension in the air. The music started playing and Nastia and I walked down the aisle like newlyweds. When we left the hall, Nastia turned to me with eyes full of tears, her face expressing a mixture of guilt and relief. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Sasha, I don't know what to say. I've been in love with you for a long time, but I've always been afraid to admit it. When my friend suggested this plan, I was on the verge of desperation and agreed. It seemed like my only chance to be with you, even if it was in the wrong way. Please forgive me for all of this." I stared at her, trying to sort out my feelings. On the one hand, a wave of anger and resentment washed over me. I had been lied to, manipulated, and all for some game or plan in which I was just a pawn. My life, our relationship, the whole wedding, it was all just part of a devious scheme. But on the other hand, her tears seemed genuine, and in her eyes I saw real emotion that was hard to fake. Part of me wanted to believe that she really did have strong feelings for me, and that it was all more about love than a lie. There was a long, agonizing pause. I didn't know what to answer right away. How can one forgive so quickly what seems like betrayal? But at the same time, I remembered my vows that I had spoken only hours ago. Oaths of loyalty and devotion. I've never been one to back down easily, even when the situation seemed unbearable. "Nastia," I finally said, trying to keep my tone calm. "I can't say I understand, much less approve, of what you and your friend did. It was a cruel deception, and I feel betrayed, disappointed. But I made a vow, and I am not one to renege on my words. I promise to be with you in joy and in sorrow. I don't know what comes next or if I can ever truly forgive this, but I'm ready to try to get to know the real you, the way you are, without masks and intrigues." In response, Nastia burst into tears, her tears flowing in streams. She stepped toward me and hugged me tightly, as if at that moment she was afraid that I would disappear. "Thank you, Sasha," she whispered through her tears. "I swear I'll do everything I can to earn your trust and love again. I want to be there for you, and I'm really sorry it started out so wrong." We went back to the wedding reception together. I tried to behave as if nothing had happened, smiling at the guests, accepting congratulations, dancing with Nastia to the sound of music, as if everything was as it should be. But inside me a real storm of emotions was raging, from resentment and anger to confusion and even curiosity. Every moment seemed unreal, as if I were looking at my life from the outside, like in a movie. At times I felt like it was all just some nightmare from which I was about to wake up. Despite the outward smiles, my thoughts were far away from here. I was contemplating how our lives would turn out after this. Would I really be able to forgive Nastia? Will I ever be able to love her the way I loved her before I knew the truth? Or would that lie remain like an invisible wall between us forever? When the evening was over and we were finally alone in our wedding suite, the tension I'd been trying to hide all day made itself felt. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling everything inside me clench with fatigue and excitement. Nastia stood next to me, clearly nervous, not knowing what to expect. I looked at her, and a heavy sigh escaped my lips. "We have a lot to talk about," I finally said, feeling the desire to hear the truth from her grow inside. "I want to know everything. How did this plan come about? Why did you agree to it? And most of all, I want to know everything about you. Who are you really, Nastia? What do you want from life? And why did you decide to take such a step?" Nastia nodded. Her eyes were full of tears, but she was also ready to tell me everything. She sat down next to me, took my hand and said quietly, "I will tell you everything, Sasha. Every step, every thought, every reason. I want you to know that despite this misguided beginning, my feelings for you are real. And I hope that in time you can see that our love is true, even if its beginning was wrong." We talked all night. Nastia told me about her life, how she had been in love with me for a long time, but was afraid to admit it because of her insecurity. She told me how her friend, that first Nastia, had suggested this plan to help her find happiness. I listened, trying to understand and accept this new reality. Part of me was still resisting, feeling betrayed. But another part was beginning to see this Nastia as a person, complex, imperfect, but sincere in her feelings. As the sun began to rise, I realized I had made my decision. I didn't know where this path would lead us, but I was willing to try. I had made a promise to love and care for Nastia, and I intended to keep that promise, no matter how difficult the circumstances. Nastia, I said, looking into her eyes, I can't promise that everything will be easy. We have a lot of work to do to build trust in a real relationship, but I'm willing to try if you really want to be with me. Nastia cried and hugged me tightly. Thank you, Sasha. I promise that I will do my best to become worthy of your love. The first week of our life together passed. There was no news from friends and the old Nastia, as if they had all vanished into thin air. This new, full Nastia tried to please me in every possible way, but it made me feel even more awkward. I felt cheated, entangled in a situation I didn't choose. One evening, when we were sitting at dinner, I decided that it was time to talk frankly. Nastia, I began, trying to find the right words. I think we should separate and start over, the right way. She froze, fork frozen halfway to her mouth. Fear flashed in her eyes. What do you mean, Sasha? She asked in a trembling voice. I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. Listen, I began, choosing the words to convey everything that was going through my head. The way our relationship started, it's wrong. We both know that. I can't just turn a blind eye to the deception and pretend like nothing happened, like it's something we can just forget and move on. We need time to realize what happened and sort out our feelings. We need a fresh start. Nastia lowered her gaze silently, her shoulders slumped as if the weight of my words were weighing down on her. She tried to say something, but the words stuck in her throat. Finally, she whispered, barely audible. Do you want to break up? There was pain and fear in her voice, as if I just suggested that I destroy what was so dear to both of us. No, I answered, surprised at how confident and sincere my words sounded. I don't want to break up. I want to give us a chance. A real chance. But to do that, we need a fresh start, without lies and pretense. We can't just build a relationship on these untruths. We need to take a step back and figure out what's important to both of us. Nastia stopped talking. I could see her face reflecting the struggle between wanting to hold on to me at all costs and realizing that I was right and that we did need a fresh start. She didn't take her eyes off our intertwined hands, as if she was afraid I might let her go. Finally, after a few agonizing minutes, she said quietly, I'm afraid. There was not only vulnerability in her voice, but something more, the fear of losing what she thought was her chance at happiness. I'm afraid that if we split up, you'll realize you don't need me, that you'll find someone better, someone who hasn't made the same mistakes. I looked at her carefully, and in that moment it became clear to me that her fears weren't just about our future, but that she felt like she wasn't good enough. I reached out and gently covered her palm with mine. Nastia, I said softly, I made you a promise, and I'm not one to back out of my words easily. But in order for us to have a chance, we need to build a relationship on trust, not fear. I want to try to start over and get to know you again. The real you, without masks and deceit. Nastia was silent for a long time, her eyes glistening with tears. Her voice trembled again as she spoke. I agree, if it gives us a chance, but I'm scared. I'm really afraid that everything will be ruined. We talked for a long time that night, discussing our fears, doubts, and hopes. Nastia realized that this was the only way if she wanted to keep any chance for the future. We decided to start with correspondence, as if it was a new stage in our relationship, a chance to get to know each other without pressure. For the first while, we really only texted each other. It was strange and new, as if we were starting the relationship anew, as two strangers, but with a deep emotional history behind us. I was getting to know Nastia from a different side of me, one I hadn't known before. She was opening up to me in her letters, talking about her dreams, her interests, her fears. It turned out that she had an incredible inner world, much deeper and richer than I could have guessed before. We discussed books she loved, movies that left a mark on her, shared thoughts on life and philosophy. She talked about how she had dreamed of being an artist as a child, but had given up on the idea, believing it was impractical. She shared the fears that plagued her and the disappointments that shaped her perception of life. I began to see her not just as the Nastia I knew before, the image I had formed in my head, but as a living, complex person with her own unique character traits that I wanted to learn more and more about. Gradually, I began to notice how my feelings for her had changed. If before I loved her for some idealized version of her, now I started to fall in love with the real Nastia, her vulnerability, her inner contradictions, and her desire to change. We built our new relationship slowly, step by step, and I believed that this new path could lead us to something deeper and more real. A few weeks later, our first meeting at a coffee shop took place. I was nervous, as if I was going on a first date. When I saw Nastia entering the cafe, my heart suddenly beat faster. She looked different, more confident, with a slight smile on her lips. We talked for a few hours, and I was surprised to find that I was actually interested in her. After that meeting, our communication became more regular. We started meeting once a week, then twice. Each meeting opened new facets of Nastia for me, and I felt my resentment and disappointment gradually giving way to interest and sympathy. I had always loved sports and often went to the gym. It was an important part of my life, a way to relieve stress and keep fit. One day, during our meeting, I mentioned my training, and Nastia suddenly showed interest. "Can I come with you?" she asked, a little embarrassed. I'd been wanting to work out for a long time, but I hadn't dared to. I was surprised, but agreed. The next day we met at the gym. Nastia looked a little unsure, but I could see the determination in her eyes. I showed her some basic exercises and helped her set up the machines. To my surprise, she turned out to be very diligent and persistent. From that day on, Nastia started practicing sports regularly. At first she went with me, but gradually she began to visit the gym on her own, even when I was busy. I saw how it changed her, not only externally, but also internally. She became more energetic, more confident. That's how we developed a common passion. We discussed workouts, shared nutrition tips, cooked healthy meals together. This brought us closer together, gave us new topics to talk about and reasons to meet. Gradually, our bond grew stronger and stronger. I caught myself thinking that I missed Nastia when we didn't see each other for a few days. I liked her sense of humor, her sincerity, her desire to become a better person. I began to notice how my heartbeat quickened when she smiled, how I wanted to touch her when we were near each other. One day, after a particularly successful workout together, we were sitting in a cafe, tired but satisfied. Nastia laughed at my joke, and I suddenly realized that I was falling in love with her. Not the image I had invented for myself, not the Nastia she pretended to be before, but this one, real, alive, imperfect, but so native. 6 months have passed since we gave our relationship a second chance and decided to start from scratch. During this time, Nastia has changed amazingly, not only externally, but also internally. Regular workouts and a healthy diet have yielded results. Her figure visibly tightened. She lost weight and looked slim and athletic. Every morning started with her exercising, whether it was jogging or exercising. I admired her discipline and determination as she changed her lifestyle completely, not only in body but also in mind. But the external changes were only the tip of the iceberg. Nastia's inner transformation was even more significant. Every week I noticed how she was becoming more and more self-confident. The shy, insecure girl I had known seemed to be a thing of the past, giving way to a strong and cheerful woman. Nastia began to take more care of herself, of her mental and physical state. She attended not only the gym, but also yoga and Pilates classes, saying that it helped her find a balance between body and mind. These practices brought her not only physical satisfaction, but also inner peace. Her eyes glowed with confidence and energy, which is what I loved the most. Every time I looked at her, I felt my admiration grow. I felt that in front of me was now a woman who was not afraid to be herself, who had finally found harmony and happiness within herself. One of the most impressive moments was how Nastia found new hobbies. She started studying foreign languages, saying it was her long-time dream that she had previously put off. Now she enthusiastically immersed herself in learning, sitting with textbooks every night, listening to podcasts, trying to speak in a new language. Moreover, she enrolled in photography courses where she learned to capture moments of beauty, which also became a source of inspiration for her. Nastia started spending more time in nature, taking pictures of sunsets, trees, and even of the two of us during our walks. I watched with great admiration as she reached her potential. She became an example to me of not only physical transformation, but of the inner strength that transforms a person's life. She was now much deeper and more interesting than the Nastia I knew at the beginning of our relationship. She had gained the versatility, sincerity, and courage that made her unique. Living with such a woman was a true gift to me. We weren't just a couple. We became a team where each supported and inspired the other. One evening, when we were sitting on the balcony of our apartment watching the sunset, Nastia turned to me with a serious expression on her face. "Sasha," she said, "I want to thank you." "For what?" I was surprised. "For giving me a chance. For not pushing me away, despite how it started. For believing in me and helping me believe in myself." She took my hand in hers. "You changed my life, Sasha, and I promise that I will try every day to be worthy of your love." I pulled her to me and kissed her gently. "You changed my life too, Nastia. You taught me that true love can come in the most unexpected ways." and I am grateful to fate for bringing us together, albeit in such a strange way. We sat with our arms around each other and watched the sun disappear over the horizon. I thought about how amazingly our story had turned out. What started out as deception and disappointment had turned into something beautiful and real. I didn't know what was ahead of us, but I was sure of one thing. Together we could overcome any difficulties. Time flew by unnoticed. One evening, when I returned from work, Nastia met me with a mysterious smile. She looked excited and happy at the same time. "Sasha, I have news for you," she said, taking my hands in hers. I felt my heart beat faster. "What news, sweetheart?" Nastia took a deep breath and blurted out, "I'm pregnant." For a moment I froze, realizing what I had heard. And then I was overwhelmed by a wave of joy and excitement. I picked up Nastia in my arms and spun around the room, laughing with happiness. "Is it true? Are we going to be parents?" I asked, not believing my happiness. Nastia nodded, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, honey, we're going to have a baby boy." I kissed her tenderly, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. It was unexpected, but so beautiful. We'd been talking about having kids for a long time, but we decided to take it slow, and now it had happened. We would become parents. In a burst of emotion, I decided to celebrate. "You know what? I'm going to make us a special dinner. Tonight we'll have a feast." Nastia shone. "Oh, can I help you?" No, you're eating for two now. Sit and rest, and I'll do everything myself," I replied, kissing her gently on the forehead. I went to the kitchen, determined to create a culinary masterpiece. Although I was not a professional chef, I had learned to cook quite decently over the years of living on my own. I decided to prepare Nastia's favorite dishes, a light salad of fresh vegetables, baked chicken with herbs, and for dessert, a fruit pie. While I was cooking, Nastia sat at the kitchen table, talking about how she found out about the pregnancy, about her feelings and dreams about our future child. I listened to her, feeling my heart fill with love and tenderness. When dinner was ready, I set the table, lit the candles, and opened a bottle of non-alcoholic champagne. We sat holding hands and talked about our future, what our baby would be like, how our lives would change. It was a magical evening full of love, hopes, and dreams. The next months flew by like a day. We went to doctor's appointments together, chose children's furniture, read books about raising children. Nastia was glowing with happiness. Her pregnancy was easy. She continued to do yoga and light physical exercises, following the doctor's recommendations. I tried to surround Nastia with care and attention. Every evening I gave her a foot massage, cooked healthy meals, read aloud books about pregnancy and childbirth. We talked together with our future baby, imagining what he or she would be like. And then came the long-awaited day. Early in the morning, Nastia woke me up saying that contractions had started. We quickly packed up and drove to the maternity hospital. The next hours were filled with excitement, fear, and hope. I held Nastia's hand, supported her, helped her breathe during contractions. And finally, we heard our daughter's first cry. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The nurse placed a small bundle on Nastia's chest, and we both cried with happiness. "Look how beautiful she is," Nastia whispered as she gently stroked our daughter's head. I looked at them both, feeling my heart overflowing with love. "She is beautiful, just like you," I replied, kissing Nastia on the forehead. We named our daughter Sophia. Now our family consisted of 3 people, and I felt like the happiest man in the world. The first months with a newborn were not easy. Sleepless nights, endless diapers, screaming, and colic. It was all a new and sometimes frightening experience for us. But we coped together, supporting each other and enjoying every moment with our little girl. Nastia turned out to be a wonderful mom. She handled the childcare with ease while continuing to take care of herself. A few months after giving birth, she returned to light workouts, gradually regaining her shape. I tried to help her with everything, changing diapers, getting up at night to the baby, preparing meals. We were a real team, and our love seemed to grow stronger every day. Time flew by unnoticed. Sophia grew up, delighting us with her first smiles, first words, first steps. Every day brought something new and amazing. One day, when our daughter Sophia was already 8 months old, Nastia and I decided to take a walk in the city center. It was one of those rare sunny days when the air is filled with warmth and lightness, and the streets are peaceful. We were walking, enjoying the moment. Nastia was pushing the stroller with Sophia, and I was walking beside her, holding her hand. Everything seemed perfect: the sunny day, the rustling leaves of the trees, and the soft laughter of our little daughter. Our life with Nastia had truly taken on a new, deep sense of happiness. Suddenly, I noticed 2 familiar figures in the crowd, Anton and Sergey, The very friends who had participated in the ill-fated bride swap plan. They were people I hadn't seen since our wedding day. Immediately, unpleasant memories came flooding back. Feelings of resentment and betrayal. I remembered how they had laughed at me that day, how their cunning plan had jeopardized my happiness with Nastia, and now they were right in front of me. They noticed me too and, to my surprise, started moving towards me. Smug smirks played on their faces, as if they were going to make a joke or say something unpleasant again. Well, hello, Sasha. Anton began with a sly grin, looking me over from head to toe. There was not a single drop of regret or embarrassment for the past in his gaze. How are you? Still with that fat girl? He cast a scornful glance in Nastia's direction, not recognizing her as the girl they had once considered their target. Sergei, chuckling, added with mockery. It must be hard for you with her, huh? Or maybe you're already divorced. I felt anger boiling up inside me. These people who betrayed me and tried to ruin my life were now here again and laughing at me again. But before I could respond or react in any way, Nastia beat me to it. Her voice sounded soft but confident. Honey, who's that? She came closer to me, pushing the stroller with Sophia in front of her. Nastia looked great, slim, fit, with shining eyes and a healthy blush on her cheeks. Her tracksuit emphasized her figure, which was now so slender and athletic that no one who saw her could call her the word Anton had just thrown at her. Her eyes glowed with calmness and confidence, and her beauty seemed to heighten the contrast with the hurtful picture my former friends held in their minds. Anton and Sergei froze with their mouths open, as if they had seen a ghost. Their gazes darted between me, Nastia and Sophia in the stroller. It was obvious, they just couldn't believe their eyes. The shock and surprise on their faces were so obvious that I couldn't hold back a slight smile. This is my wife, Nastia, I said, hugging her around the waist, showing my pride and love. And our daughter, Sophia. Nastia, seeing that the situation was tense, but not wanting to create a conflict, smiled welcomingly, extending her hand for acquaintance. It's very nice to meet you, she said with a polite smile. Are you friends of Sasha's? Both guys looked completely dumbfounded. Their smug smirks evaporated, leaving a look of utter confusion on their faces. Anton seemed to be the first to try to say something, but instead only nodded uncertainly, unable to find the words. Sergei, who had been laughing a moment ago, now looked as if the ground had gone from under his feet. At that moment I realized that there was no need to say anything more. Everything had already been said without words. Nastia, my strong, beautiful, and loving wife, and our little Sophia were the best answer to their taunts and rude words. I looked at them both with a sense of deep satisfaction. Everything they had once considered a joke was now my happiness. Anton and Sergei, who once thought they knew everything better than anyone else, were just witnesses to the fact that my life had changed for the better, in spite of their efforts. Nastia, still holding her hand outstretched, looked absolutely confident, and this finally broke any possibility of continuing the conversation. Anton, noticing this, awkwardly mumbled something inaudible in response to her greeting and, throwing a quick glance at Sergei, clearly signaled that they were going to leave. Well, we should go, Sergei said uncertainly, not looking me in the eye, and then both of them hurried away, leaving us alone. When they were out of sight, I couldn't help laughing. Nastia looked at me, raising her eyebrows in surprise. What's wrong, honey? She asked, smiling slightly. They didn't expect to see you like this, I answered, feeling warm and proud. And they certainly didn't expect to see me with a family like that. I think it was the best moment of the whole day. Nastia laughed and snuggled up to me, continuing on our way. We were happy and those shadows of the past were far behind us. We continued our walk, talking and laughing. I thought about how amazingly our lives had turned out. What started out as deception turned into the truest, most genuine, sincere love. We had been through a lot, but each trial only strengthened our feelings. Looking at Nastia pushing the stroller with our daughter, I felt overwhelmed with love and gratitude. She changed not only outwardly, becoming a beautiful, slender woman. She had changed internally, becoming more confident, discovering her talents and abilities. And I was proud to be a part of these changes, that we were growing and developing together. In the evening, after putting Sophia to bed, we sat on the balcony, enjoying the quiet evening. Nastia rested her head on my shoulder, and I put my arm around her. You know, she said quietly, sometimes I think about how things could have turned out differently. If I hadn't agreed to that crazy plan, if I hadn't had the courage to be myself. I kissed the top of her head. I think about it sometimes, too. But you know what? I'm grateful for everything that happened. because it brought us here, to this moment, to our love, to our daughter, to our life. Nastia raised her head and looked me in the eyes. I love you, Sasha. Thank you for believing in me, for giving me a chance. I love you, Nastia, I answered, kissing her. You made my life full and happy. I want to apologize for any mistakes in the text or dubbing. I am just learning, and the language of this channel is not my mother tongue. The dubbing is done with the help of artificial intelligence. Please point out errors so I can fix them and improve the quality of the content. Also, I will be glad if you share your thoughts on the topic. Your support in the comments is very motivating for me to keep looking for new, interesting stories. Thank you for your understanding and participation. Subscribe to the channel and put a bell to not miss new stories.